Jessica Kennedy Matthews, Jessica Kennedy, Matthews, Mattthews. That one's a new one. Still working on that.
So where do you live, and have you always lived here?
I live in Valley, Nebraska, and I've lived in Nebraska my whole life, and I've moved a whole bunch in the last 3 years. I had lived in Lincoln for my first 41 years, and then moved to Omaha with a job opportunity. My family had moved here to where I wanted to be. A year after I moved, I met my now husband, and he had a kiddo who's going to be graduating from high school. So late last summer, I moved back to Lincoln and stayed there until May, and we got our youngest graduated and then just moved to Valley.
So what would you miss most if you had to leave Valley tomorrow?
I think my family. I mean, that, again, the whole reason to come back this direction is my parents live in Omaha. Scott's family is in California. So if I had to leave here tomorrow, missing my family would be the hardest part because I've worked hard to get to be near them.
So for folks who are not from here, haven't been here,
Mm-hmm.
what do you wish they would know about life in eastern Nebraska?
Life in eastern Nebraska, it's a really good question because I travel a lot. And so in some ways I do think about that a lot, like what makes us different. I think there's a balance to it. I remember in college, I had a professor who talked about the Midwestern work ethic. And I think there is a pervasiveness in personality and outlook. Sometimes I don't always agree with that. There's definitely a conservatism that comes with it that's sometimes a little challenging since I am more on the liberal end of the spectrum. But I feel that the way we govern, the way we socialize, the way we interact here, Eastern Nebraska and Western Nebraska is a little bit different, but I still would say this is pretty pervasive across the state, is there's just a pretty solid goodness of people, and it starts with the people and then you see it in business. Business is pretty good and pretty strong. There's, and again, balanced. And I think governance is pretty strong and pretty balanced. And we have been able to weather a lot of the ups and downs that have come in the last 15 years with financial issues, with the Great Recession and whatever we're going to call this now. We've done okay. And in fact, probably in comparison to a lot of areas have done pretty darn well and bounced back pretty quickly.
So,
Yep, do the check.
always checking.
Yes, absolutely.
I still have storage, I still have battery, I still have...
Yep.
So, how would you describe your career arc, your career? What's your livelihood? What's that story?
What's my story? Well, right now, it's kind of an interesting, I left the corporate world to go finish a graduate degree. And so it was an interesting time to already be working from home when the pandemic started. Likewise, also knowing that my previous employer had done furloughs and layoffs, I was like, oh, that would have probably been me at that point. So knowing that I missed a lot of that stress that maybe some of my contemporaries feel. But my arc overall, I'm trying to think, how would be the best way to describe it? I've always sought work with meaning, work with purpose that helped people be better or do better. So I worked for an alumni association. I worked for a technology company that focused on HR. I worked for a newspaper. I worked for an art museum. I worked in healthcare consulting for a number of years. My roles in that range from communications and marketing to consulting with kind of a strong research side to all of that. My last role was in publishing. And so it's interesting. I didn't know exactly, when I started my degree, I was working for a major corporation, had a vision of where that was going to take, where I wanted that to take me. It was going to probably require a lot of travel. Well, once I met my husband, I was my first marriage. I've waited a long time to meet this awesome guy. I didn't want to be gone from him. And then I ended up leaving that corporation. So I don't know what my rest of my arc looks like, which is kind of interesting. My goal right now is to finish. And then I think the landscape will show me where I need to be. I have a great network. I have a strong sense of mission and purpose, and helping people, the answer will come clear as the time is right. And maybe that's faith, maybe that's fate, maybe that's just belief that something has always been there when it was time for it to be there.
So in 2 words or less, how would you describe the year 2020? And then why did you choose this word? Why did you choose this word?
I would describe the year 2020 as transformative. I think most people use the word transformative and try to think about, like it's a positive thing. I don't think we know, the loss of life is absolutely tragic, and the illnesses and outcomes that are related to that. But I think it's transformative. I think people want to use this time to find a new forward, a forward that didn't look like the forward that we had been on 5 months ago.
So, describe the moment COVID-19 became real to you, and then how did that make you feel?
COVID-19 became real early on because we were traveling. So I got married on December 31st, 2019, and we immediately left for Hawaii for 2 weeks and had started to hear about this disease, illness in China. And my husband's a pretty diligent traveler about washing hands and not touching things and hand sanitizer. And so, that generally is a part of our world anyway. I don't think it was so much as a concern, but we're both news consumers. And so it was on our radar, and but didn't really worry about it. We traveled again. So that took us to mid-January. When we traveled to California at the end of February for his parents' 50th wedding anniversary, we were much more aware of it. It was a little we were a little nervous, but not too bad. We traveled 2 weeks later then, the first week of March, and we were both high alert. Like the tension, or our uncomfortableness with travel was exceptionally high at that point. We were going to a work conference, and he was speaking, and so we needed to be there. We were just flying to Denver. It was just one leg, but it was very Hollywoodish, almost like, hands in pockets, sanitizers, we had planned movements, and we waited until the last people to get on the plane, and, we had researched, we fly first class, and so we knew that was actually one of the safest places to be in the plane, during the regular flight. And there was a level of awareness that we had not had even 6 weeks prior, even 2 weeks prior. So that was when it really became real. And then I think the final blow was his oldest birthday was in middle of March, and we went out to dinner. And it was like, I was really close to being like, we should not do this. Like, we should not be going out. And it really was the last time we ate out. And so I think it was sort of in those first 2 weeks. And then I think where there was a saturation versus not just an awareness, where there was a saturation, it was when the death toll started to come out of Italy. And I remember sobbing. I mean, it's just like, oh my God, 4,000 people, 5,000 people died yesterday, 6,000 people died yesterday. Like, had not in our lifetime ever seen that, right? I was born at the end of the Vietnam War, so as a kid, that was not on our radar. Even then, all of the different parts of the Gulf War, we've never experienced that, H1N1, SARS, certainly, obviously, the normal causes of death that we accept and happen, there are large numbers, but to have that marked change, that was the saturation point. And I think a lot of people sort of hit that first 2 weeks second week of isolation, because it was like, holy buckets, this is real, and it's coming.
How did your daily life change at first?
Our daily life didn't change a lot. My husband had been working from home remotely. He wasn't going to travel anymore. Had made a decision not to travel the third week in March. I was already working from home with school or just kind of the day-to-day stuff. I think that where we saw the biggest change was actually for our 18-year-old and our 21-year-old, because our 21-year-old worked in banquet events, and that just disappeared overnight. And he had plans to move out with friends. And so his plan actually changed. He decided to go to California and live with Grandma and Grandpa. Grandpa had health issues and wanted to help Grandma out, and then he's an inventor and had an idea and wanted to try to pursue it out there. And so, sending your kid across the country during a pandemic, that was a big change. And then our 18-year-old, he got it, but he liked to go out every night, right? And not, and he's a car kid, so they would go sit in their car and they'd listen to music and talk and Snapchat while they're sitting. And so we were already kind of putting in like expectations, like, you can go out, but you guys need to stay in your own cars, which wasn't a big deal. I think the biggest change for us was that he actually had gotten a really serious ticket right at the beginning of the pandemic, which took out all of the fights that we were going to have, right? Like he actually self-grounded himself from his car. And I just can't tell you what a blessing that was, that we didn't have to fight that battle every day during the scariest, worst parts of it. And so we actually fell into a really nice routine. His was kind of weird. He'd stay up all night playing, Call of Duty. And then there's a really interesting app for 18 to 24-year-olds called Yubo that he got involved with and has become active with, and was meeting people from New Zealand and all around the country. And maybe not even really talking about the pandemic, but just he was building connections and life the way he could. And then he'd get up for dinner and then we'd go take the dogs out for a walk or go play with them in the field behind our house in Lincoln. And then we'd all sit down and watch a movie. I watched a lot of movies I would not normally have watched because I have an 18-year-old boy. I've now seen all the Bad Boys, and we saw the Terminators, and we saw all the Alien movies. And anyway, it was great. And so we actually had some really good bonding as a family in that regard. So in some ways it wasn't dramatic. And then we moved in the middle of it all too. So we were packing and getting ready to move during the pandemic. So a lot of focus on that.
So what changes of your habits and routines that have come about because of the pandemic that you're actually would like to keep in that life now?
It's interesting. If we had this conversation a few weeks, well, probably before we moved, it was a lot more cleaning, right? Like when we didn't know how it was being transmitted, and we thought it was coming in on every package and every mail, and I wiped down everything. I've let that go. Like I really do believe that it is primarily a person-to-person transmission. Doesn't mean that there isn't risk in the air and there isn't risk on packages, but generally if you wash hands, and I was a hand washer, I probably can't wash my hands a little bit more than I did before, but like I no longer have like dry, peeling, red, cracked skin from the amount that I washed it that first month. I don't ever want to be as busy as we were, and we were pretty, we were pretty good, but I always like, oh, we should go run do this and run do that. We probably buy more off of Amazon than we did before, because it wasn't, you just don't go run to the store like you did before. But I miss hugging my mom. I miss hugging my girlfriends. I miss groups of friends getting together. I actually, in a couple days, two of my best friends that live in Omaha are going to come over to the house. As you can see, I live on a lake, and so we're going to socially distance and be, in the sun and be able to be together. And I'm pretty excited about that. And I miss, we're big supporters of the arts. We have symphony tickets and opera tickets and Omaha Performing Arts tickets, and all of that's gone. And I miss that, I miss the culture that we had. But I was a little bit of a homebody, so we bought the house that we bought because we wanted our family to come together and have a place to gather. We also wanted our friends to gather. Little did we know that it would provide a very safe place for everybody to gather during the pandemic, because we've got a private bathroom off of the patio that we clean for each guest. And we've got an outdoor fridge where they can put any snacks or beverages that they want. The patio is big enough that we can sit socially distanced apart if we were to go out on the boat. No one worries about it because everything's literally blowing away from us the moment it comes out of our mouth. So it's pretty incredible. I probably get some more safe interaction with my friends than other people do because we ended up moving to this house.
So what's been the biggest challenge for you throughout the pandemic? And then how does it compare to any other big challenge you had to go through?
For us, it's a little bit different. One of the biggest challenges of the pandemic is learning how to be a mom and a wife. For me personally, I got married on New Year's Eve. I had moved in August last year, and now all of a sudden I had a 21 and an 18-year-old boys, and I hadn't had roommates since college. So I had lived on my own for a very long time. And so pandemic or not, that's actually been the biggest change. And I think the pandemic has only intensified it because we all are together all the time, right? There's no real going out. We've all, like, our 21-year-old moved, and then our 18-year-old has now ungrounded himself and does go out, but is also very careful. He's asthmatic, I'm asthmatic. So I think that's that's really been the biggest. Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest moments for the pandemic. It's just the lessons we would have learned anyway are just so much more hyper intensified because of the intensity around the moment. I think for us, well, I'll leave that out. Yeah.
Has it compared to anything else you've done through life?
Oh, it doesn't. I've never been married before, and I've never been a parent before. So in some ways, I have no comparison to this. I think, the other thing that came to mind is just news consumption, right? Like, your news consumption goes skyrocket, and then you've got to figure out how to deal with that. Do you pull back? How do you edit? How do you protect your mental health from that consumption? And so, I think there's a component of that with the 2016 election, pretty much the 2016 election was the last big one. So, yeah, this is a unique moment in time for me for so many reasons, right? It's not just the pandemic. It's also being a wife for the first time. It's being a parent for the first time. And layered into this for us is I'm also the parent of a biracial child with the Black Lives Matter movement that is happening at the same time. That's added an interesting dynamic of, how do I help him through this? So, and really it's what he lets me know he needs. So, yeah.
So how will your daily life feel like 2 years from now?
I think in 2 years, my daily life will be somewhat similar. I don't know that I will ever feel super comfortable, like, going to the gym again and breathing all the same things that other people are breathing, but I might. So I think exercise will still be kind of part of it, whether that's at home or here. I do feel that I will have, I hope within a year or so, once there's a vaccine, because again, I have asthma, so I don't leave a lot, that I can get involved in the community. I think really, like, my work will be more of consultative in nature, whatever work I end up doing, whether it's teaching or coaching or consulting. But I would love to be able to volunteer, be able to get into the community, be able to do good in the world, whatever that may be at the time. I suspect that it'll be around racial equality, around women and children's issues. Those have been important to me for a number of years prior to all of this. So.
You just answered the next question.
Okay.
What was your reaction to the George Floyd incident?
Mm-hmm.
And then what has been kind of your observations and reactions to everyone else's reaction to this racial injustice conversation that's emerged in such a profound way?
It's a complex answer. We had just experienced Mr. Aubrey's brutal murder. The weekend before, Mr. Collins had been, called out in New York Central Park for asking a woman to put her dog on the leash, which really showed that white fragility piece of it. So there's a level of curiosity for me that why now? What was it about George Floyd that, it was horrific. We've had horrifics and it's been building. So why now versus Ferguson? And I think that, and I'm glad, right? I'm glad that we're getting a broader awareness of the issues. I think that some of that is because we have more time to think, right? We're less busy. We're more engaged in the things that matter most to us, right? Because we don't have a lot of the excess noise or movement that we had just to fill our days, right? And so in that, I think there are more conversations happening, more reading happening, more reflections happening. And I think for me personally, and I think for what I've heard from some of my friends, white friends, more listening, that there's just, it makes me ill that it took us those 6 years from Ferguson to now to have this understanding as a white population. I'm embarrassed that of the latent racism that I still see that I've been peeling back over the last, few weeks. Again, becoming a mother to a young Black man has changed my perspective significantly. When I moved in, I had asked my husband, I said, have you talked to Jaden about, what to do for cop stops? And he's like, oh, we should probably have that conversation. So we had started some of that, and I'm blessed because I have friends who are Black and people of color who have talked about their journeys and their stories, and I have listened, and that has helped me, I hope, be a good partner to my son now and hopefully going forward in his own experiences and his own journey. And fortunately, for the most part, he's been pretty optimistic. He's pretty, up until recently, has been pretty positive about police. I think this has started to change the conversation. Again, he's still, news intake is still not his high priority in the day as an 18-year-old. But I have found that the change for me is that my listening skills are even more heightened. And in that, again, unpacking, unpeeling, realizing how much I still have to learn, and then trying to figure out what I can do. So you ask, have you participated in the protests? Well, no, because as an asthmatic, and I've really struggled this spring to get it under control, not going out in public within a big group is probably a smart decision for me. So then how do I get involved? And right now the decision is, I'm here to support my kiddo. And then I've reached out to some friends that I've met through some volunteer work in Omaha and looking for ways that I can use my marketing, communication, PR, editing skills, networking skills to maybe help. We'll continue to see, as opportunity, is one of my friends, which is what I plugged into. She's like, how do we move from protest to policy? And I'm kind of a policy wonk. And so I'm curious to see how I can get involved and help in this. But the key to this too is that the white communities, we need to figure out how we listen and how we follow and support, right? This is not us to come out and solve the problem. Although we have our own problems of ourselves to solve and our own communities to bring along in the journey. We'll see where I can support my brothers and sisters. So,
what 1 to 2 words describe how you feel about the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I would describe myself as cautiously optimistic. I think that the anti-science community will be shown that they need to listen to science. I hope we don't have a second wave like the Spanish flu had a second wave, where it became significantly deadly. But I hope that enough people start to have impacts. If impacts have to happen, then enough people start to understand, oh, this is significant, not just to someone over there that I don't know, but it's significant to my people too, right? So we start to have this understanding that we're in this together. I think we've lost a little of that community-ness. Interesting, though, in New York City, which is a huge, giant community, they have an identity of togetherness, right? It's actually in smaller communities where it's this more, I don't know, just people haven't come together. I'm cautiously optimistic about where we'll be with starting to break down the racial inequalities or building up racial equalities. I hope that I'm cautiously optimistic because I always want to believe the best in people. I just want to believe it. And I think that humanity wants to survive. And I don't think we survive being negative. I think we survive by finding hope and by finding love and by finding belief and support in each other and working together to get us to a better place.
Is there a question that I should have asked you that I haven't?
My favorite question. It's, and you didn't ask a question, but just, it's a thought that I've sort of played with, which is I've always wondered with all of the, I'm going to say the damage we've done to the planet, that I always wondered if some point the planet would strike back, right? I've watched a lot of science fiction over the years. I've read a lot of real science over the years. I remember when bird flu hit, we thought maybe that, I kind of thought, well, maybe this will be the thing. The Earth has a way of reducing populations, and I shouldn't laugh because I feel like that was a nervous laugh. I wonder if this is a reset. That we are on a wrong path, and a path of divisiveness, a path of destruction. And if it doesn't, I believe that humanity is often at its best when it's on the ropes. And I feel like we're on the ropes. And I'm really curious to see what sort of innovation and resiliency and problem solving comes out of this. I'm especially buoyed by the younger generation, by Gen Z. They are fascinating. They're Gen X kids, so they're raised a little bit different than the millennials. And I love their little, we made the Trump rally look like they were going to have 1 million, attendees. And some people thought it was disrespectful, but I thought, what an interesting way to use technology in a group that doesn't have a traditional political voice, right? They can't vote. Trump administration, Trump campaign's not going to sit down at a table with them to listen to them, and certainly not to take them seriously. So here they found a way within their own systems that have been created kind of around them to make political noise, to bring message out. So, I have optimism to that. If this is sort of an unfortunate cleansing time, we lose people we love, we face major societal change that needs to happen because we are one people. We shouldn't have tiers or castes or structures, right? We should all have equal opportunity. That innovation, forward movement, inventiveness, problem solving will come out of this time.
So let me ad lib a question based on you mentioning your biracial son.
Mm-hmm.
What do you wish people who haven't been around, if people who are more in the white culture, who've not been around people who have color, black, and specifically black young men, what do you wish they would know about young black men?
It's a hard question for me to answer, partially because of my own frame. My lens in life, in Gallup language, my Clifton strength is, number one, is individualization. So I am inherently interested and fascinated into what makes people who they are, uniquely who they are. And so for me, it's unfathomable that you wouldn't want to get to know and understand people that are different than you and people that are like you, because there's still things that are different about them that is insightful and provides guidance. Beyond that, I don't know that I can speak to that because it's not my place to speak to that, right? I think you need to listen, right? You need to learn. You need to not have prejudgments about what they are like and what they want in the world and how they're going to respond to it based on your frame or your lens, right? Yeah, music's different. Dress might be different. But at the end of the day, they're humans who have needs and wants and hopefully have dreams and desires. Hopefully haven't killed them. How do we, I want people to figure out, how do you connect? How do you understand? And I think it's an important question that you ask. And again, I don't know that I really feel super qualified to answer that question other than listen and learn. Because the research showed coming out of 2016, the elections, that voters that, and there was actually some sort of actual geographic marker, but, and it's been re-verified, but if you live around people who look like you are more afraid of people who don't look like you, right? You have less understanding. To some extent, understandable, right? Like, you don't have exposure. You don't have that opportunity to learn. You don't have, even if you had natural curiosity, where are you going to find that? I mean, the internet, but still different. So, I don't know. I hope that people approach them as humans, and also understand that in addition to their individualness and they're part of the Black community and Black culture, the bigger piece is that really is institutional pieces of our society that hold them down, right? There are things that, as white people, white educated people, white middle class people, we have access to that they don't, or consequences that we don't pay that they do, right? And I think that that's a hard one for people to understand, because they haven't had the experience, and if they haven't even had people in their life that are of color, they've never have even seen it happen to someone. So I think there's approach each person as an individual and understand their needs and their wants and their desires and their dreams and their thoughts and their experiences, and then also understand that in the broader context, they aren't having the same experience that you are. And they generally can't. I mean, even the research shows that even African Americans, like I think there was a study in D.C. that are affluent have, I was out in like Prince George County, Maryland. This was around the coronavirus. Lower access to health care, right? Lower percentage of doctors per population, fewer, more health disparities than a neighboring county of similarly affluenced white community, right? So even well-to-do Black communities suffer more institutionally than traditional white communities. So it's not just understanding the individual, but the work we need to do to help make sure that just because your skin happens to be a different color, you don't have less access to healthcare, less access to quality doctors, less access to good education, less access to food. Making sure we don't have food deserts, making sure that we have fresh food available. I mean, there's a lot of work that we need to do, and it can seem exhausting. Find one that matters to you to understand that one and start there. Those would be my thoughts.
That's good advice. So last question.
Yeah.
This is going to go on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to watch it wherever they're going to watch it and wherever they're going to watch it. Might be now, might be later. So this is a chance for you to kind of share a message with whoever's watching this right now. What you, at this moment in time, want to convey to the world, whatever message that might be.
I think the biggest message is to love, right? Right? Because from love we have compassion. From love we have belief. From love we have hope. From love we can process grief. From love we can build. Through love we listen. Through love we seek to understand. For some people, love is their access to faith, or connected to their faith. For those of us that are maybe more on the secular humanitarian side, it helps us connect to people. And I think love, right? Like, let's get the hate out. I mean, that's something that I struggle with my political beliefs, looking at people with, polar opposite political beliefs. I struggle with that, right? To not hate them, but to love them and to seek to understand and to listen to them too. Really hard, really hard. But I think if we choose love instead of fear, right? If we choose love instead of my own personal benefit. Now, it's not to say that I'm asking you to make huge sacrifices, but I've seen faith get twisted so that it's used as a weapon versus my understanding of at least Judo Christianity, which was about love, right? Jesus was about love. Most of the religions to the extent that I understand them, are about love and caring and taking care of your people, right? So if we could get back to that, again, whether it's faith, whether it's the humanitarian secularist approach, we love. A lot comes out of that. A lot of problems get solved right there.
Love it.